What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the FN Studios. Ram Dean and Black with you, chatting about UFC 205, a historic night last night in the United States of America as the underdog Donald Trump becomes the president of the United States. And we're not going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the fact that no, we're not talking about that. UFC 205. There's a bunch of underdogs. We're going to talk about three in particular. To me, I think the biggest example of an underdog in this fight card has to be Jeremy Stephens against Frankie Edgar. Just over the last number of years, since he's become the 155-pound champion, very few people talk negatively about Frankie Edgar because every time he steps inside of the cage, you know you're going to witness mixed martial arts mastery.
You know, Jose Aldo figured out how to beat him in that moment, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. Mark Henry, Frankie, they all give him the credit he deserves for that. It really was remarkable. Astonishing how much he was the opposite of what they had prepared for. Can Jeremy Stephens do that? I don't know. Maybe he can. I mean, Jeremy Stephens is a very talented guy, very smart guy, doesn't get enough appreciation for his mind, and he packs that power. A lot of people will say, oh, well, you know, if you hit somebody and they fall down, the issue is that Frankie moves his head on the way in, he moves his head on the way out, he strikes, moves, moves his feet, and he's gone. Yeah. He's never in that spot. Now, do Hail Marys happen? Of course they do. But even if you fought him the way that Jose fought him, they have now retooled their game. If that game is presented to them, they're ready for it now. It's a tough fight for Jeremy Stephens, no doubt about it. Does he have the power to turn him off with one shot? Of course he does, but it's a tough fight for him. And we're Jeremy Stephens.
Do you believe that patience will be a factor for Jeremy Stephens? We know that he's an action fighter. We know what the assignments have been in the past. But, as you pointed out, these fighters are all trying to evolve past what their opponents know them as. But Jeremy Stephens, one of the reasons why fans tune in to see this guy is his assignment is, I'm coming to hunt you down. You move that way, I'm just going to chase you and swing and kick with the goal to beat you down and get the knockout victory.
That was the plan against Max Holloway. That was the assignment. They understood the assignment. We interviewed him in Las Vegas. He explained the assignment, and it's very hard to execute that assignment. That was the plan against Cub Swanson. He did take one round from Cub, but it's still the assignment, and it's an even harder version of it.
Isn't Max Holloway, though, on the level of Frankie Edgar? Could you say definitively that if Max Holloway faced off with Frankie Edgar, that Frankie Edgar would win that
No,
fight?
I can't say that definitively, but man, I'd like to see that fight. But the advantage of reach is one that is not here now. So Frankie does have to get closer to you to make his thing happen. He also likes the short hooks, the uppercuts, so he will be in range a little more. That's something. So that changes the dynamic ever so slightly. Jeremy Stephens can win this fight. Don't get it twisted. He absolutely can win this fight, but he is an underdog for sure.
Raquel Pennington over Miesha Tate. It just feels that Miesha Tate has more tools to win. We've seen her win in a multitude of ways. Why is Pennington, do you believe, the underdog?
Miesha has more skills in more areas, but this is a live dog because she's mentally super tough and she knows her job. Miesha, how will she respond to that loss? For my money, the biggest underdog, not the biggest, but a big underdog is the champ Tyron Woodley. Yeah. I really do believe that how he is built is exactly the prototype of what Wonderboy has been beating, and Johnny Hendricks and Ellenberger and all of these guys. His game is designed to beat that thing. Can he win the fight? Yeah.
Aren't there a couple other factors that say, okay, Tyron Woodley is different than Johnny Hendricks and Ellenberger in these ways? Could we utilize these factors to get the victory over Wonderboy?
He's smarter, and he's a better athlete. He closes distance faster, and he accelerates really fast. So all of those are things Wonderboy has to take into account. If he underestimates any of them, he absolutely can lose that fight. Also, the Duke Rufus variable, where Duke loves the challenge of figuring out Wonderboy and comes from a karate and long pant kickboxing background. His brother Rick and himself were karate champions, so they love this assignment of figuring this thing out. Bobby T, one of the guys here, was like, I'd have figured he'd have been Machida by now. That, you know, you'd look at it, somebody would have figured him out like Machida. They haven't.
I would imagine that an X factor would be Chris Weidman. We know that Wonderboy has that affiliation, and if wrestling is going to be a factor, well, Chris Weidman's getting ready for Yoel Romero, the wrestling powerhouse, and I would imagine Stephen Thompson would be the benefactor of being in that room.
When we were talking about Michael Johnson versus Khabib earlier, a while back, you can see that on our YouTube channel, we were talking about that ability. If someone closes the distance and gets you, now you have to incorporate your wrestling ability or your get back up ability. That's the stuff he would have worked on with Chris Weidman. But first you have to get a hold of him, and that's what he's a master of, is not letting you get a hold of him.
Robin Black believes that we will see a new UFC welterweight champion at UFC 205 in New York.